So literally, here I go. I've got this adaptation, yeah. Yet, if I don't understand that her need for truth means to be really clear and tell her exactly what I'm feeling and thinking and what happened, I'll just use my adaptation for truth, which might be, you know what, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm going to kind of omit a few details here. And then she finds out about that. What's going to happen? Does she trust me? Of course not. But if we haven't discussed that where we actually sit, and that's where a robust debate may come in, because you've got to be able to go through a robust debate and get out the other side of it and not hate each other, not, be angry and upset with each other and hold a grudge, because we're communicating. Communication requires that some communication is painful, and that's okay, because we generally tend to avoid pain, and pain creates resilience, and resilience creates emotional evolution as well. So we become resilient.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by David Milan, Behaviorist. David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Tanya. It's wonderful to be there.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you on the show. Now, we're going to start off the way we start off every show, and that's just by learning a little bit more about the person we're having the conversation with, for everyone who's participating in this conversation. So we're going to start off by asking you the loaded question. Who is David Milan?
Well, that is a loaded question. It could be a long or a short one, right? David Milan is an intimate partner profiler. So I profile intimate partnerships or intimate relationships and help people understand their partner in a way probably that hasn't really been done before. So I have a background of the military, of clinical or mental health social work. I've been in private practice for quite a few years, and now I'm an intimate partner profiler.
Excellent. And what we'll be discussing tonight is the importance of emotional evolution, because as you put it, this is something that's critical for marriage success. So let's kind of start off by defining that. How would you define emotional evolution?
Well, it's a bit like this. It's a little bit of a longer topic, if you can bear with me. Imagine for a moment that you're pre-encoded. You don't start life off as a blank slate or tabula rasa. You start life off with epigenetics. In other words, experiences from your ancestors, probably at least 3 generations, and everyone can look that up online. It's a huge science. You've got your genetic coding. You've got information at time of conception. In other words, how mum and dad were going. Then when you're born, of course, you've got mum, how she's going in the womb. Then when you're born, you literally are that blank slate and you're absorbing everything that's going on. So there's no such thing as, we don't argue in front of the kids. They absorb and pick up everything. So your original identity, let's say for about the first 18 months, is not your own. It's your caregivers, and it's installed into you. Have you ever had that situation where you've met someone and said, I'm never going to be like my dad and my mum? You know, that's about when they're 16, yeah? 25, oh my God, I'm like my dad or my mum. So, it's because we have that pre-installation. And I work in behavior and I work basically biologically. So I don't use the thinking mind much because it kind of tends to lie to us and make up stories based on how we feel. It's called emotional refraction. Dr. Paul Ekman will talk about that a lot. So literally this emotional evolution is kind of the way that we make improvements to our relationship success. Emotional evolution is how we move through regulating our feelings and just becoming a better you. It's a bit like this. I get a lot of lads who might be sitting on my couch across from me. I used to be a therapist, but now, as I said, I'm a profiler. And I work specifically with helping people make sense of how they interact with each other, especially their communication and their body language and all that lot. Imagine I've got a lad sitting on the couch. He's about 40, and he says to me, this is real, this really happens. And he says, oh, Dave, I just got divorced today. And he goes, oh, that's terrible, mate. Tell me more about that. And he'll say, well, the divorce papers were slipped across the table this morning. And I'll say, oh, well, tell me a little bit about your relationship. And they go, oh, well, I was a good provider. I was a good protector. I put the kids in front of the Xbox. Sorry, Mr. Gates. I put the kids in front of the Xbox. And, you know, I was a good dad. And I looked after them. I did all that. So he provided and he protected. And the first question I'm going to ask once it's appropriate is, did you meet her emotional needs by any chance? He's going to go, this is real. He's going to go, what are they? And so now my thing will be, hey, it's a bit like this. You're on the Titanic, you know, that really large ocean liner that sunk in about 1912. And it's going down, and that's your relationship, basically. And you're arranging deck chairs and listening to the band play because everything's great. Meanwhile, a year ago, she's rowing away on the life raft. Now, this is not gender specific, okay? It does happen to males more than females in this context, though. So emotional evolution is being able to adapt emotionally to the environment, to be able to not have more feelings, because everyone says to me, oh, Dave, do I have to feel more? I'm saying, no, look, I'm alexithymic. I've got a range of 5 feelings, trust me. So at the end of the day, it's not about feeling more. It's about noticing where in the body the feelings are, identifying them, feeling it to heal it, actually not suppressing them, because suppression is depression. Literally, emotion is the energy and motion of the feeling. Feelings are the things you get in the body. Emotions are the energy and motion of the feeling. So being able to recognize that you've got these accumulated experiences, which are technically electrical and chemical, although we'll say that, you know, there's something we experience somatically in the body. Being able to experience those feelings, identify them, not express them as you made me angry, but go, you know what, there's anger in my body right now. What am I going to do about that? So that's when we're using our thinking mind to start to analyze or assess the situation, because it gives us more choices. So emotional evolution is about recognizing how we feel, managing that appropriately. And in that way, we're going much more deeper into the intimate part of our relationship. You'll find that relationships that are actually successful, not people who've been married 50 years, you know, they go on separate holidays, have separate bank accounts, sleep in separate beds and say it's all wonderful. You'll actually find their nervous systems, if you try and put those two together, when they start walking towards each other, there'll be like a gap, and it'll be what I call the emotional wall. You can feel it, because the nervous system, which is everything below our awareness, I'm going to call it for simplicity, is saying, hey, that person's dangerous, and I'm running some code to suggest they are, from the unconscious to the subconscious, which is where our behavior and patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior are in our subconscious. Our unconscious records everything like a big hoarder. It hoards every sensory experience, whacks it in the big warehouse of our whole body, and says, hey, do I need that bit right now? Yes, I do. There's a safety threat. Pull it out, get a feeling, get some thoughts associated. Usually those thoughts are not necessarily correct. And then there's a response. So emotional evolution is about recognizing that process and then making a choice of how to manage it. And that does take quite a bit of self-awareness. We have to have self-awareness for that process, because emotional refraction literally means, and this is what the latest neuroscience says, Dr. Tony Fitzgerald will tell you this. He cost me a packet, but he's very well worth it. Literally, he will say that if we have a feeling, our brain does not challenge that feeling. It says it's true automatically. Isn't that interesting? It's true. Okay, because we feel it. And then when we have a feeling, we do this amazing thing called deletion, distortion, and generalization. First thing we kind of do, this all happens almost instantly like this. It's very fast. A deletion is we delete everything that doesn't fit with the quality of the feeling. So if I'm angry and I'm looking at you guys right now, suddenly all the wonderful things we were saying before the show are all gone. Now you guys technically are the source of my anger. Isn't that weird, eh? So even though that's not reality, that's how our system works. So that's a deletion. I delete what doesn't fit with the feeling quality. Then there's a generalization, which means you know when someone's in a refractory state because they use what we call generalized language. Oh, you never do the dishes. You always treat me bad. You never loved me. Those never, always, everybody, everything words are generalized words, which says that now, rather than something like more realistic, yesterday, when you said that thing, I became upset. So and I feel upset. It's not about you, it's about me. However, this process makes everything about the person in front of us or the object in front of us. So if this laptop's working well this morning, I'm pretty happy with it. There's no problem. But if it doesn't work, I get angry at the laptop. But how's it the laptop's fault? So the reality is, it's not the laptop's fault. It's actually that I'm unaware of what's in my system. And I'm unaware of these processes that are going on. And the last thing, my favorite, is the distortion. We create a new memory based on the feeling, not the reality. So if that quality of feeling is negative, technically it becomes a negative. You start to see that person as negative. That's why relationships actually fail. Because a lot of the time, of course, there are real reasons for relationship failure. Although a lot of the time it's the deletion, the distortion, the generalization that keeps repeating over and over and over again. And that person starts as friend and becomes enemy. So you're not at your wedding day and it's not like this. The preacher or the person, celebrant says, okay, let's have your vows. And you go, well, we're going to love each other for 18 months while I've got a bunch of chemicals that make us miss all the red flags. We're only going to see the good stuff. That's called positive refraction, by the way. So I'm also a dating coach. So in the dating world, positive refraction is where you look at the person, oh, I'm in love, because you've got a bunch of hormones going on. And you're missing all the cues that suggest that possibly, because you haven't sorted and qualified correctly, this person isn't that good for you. So that's a positive refraction, with not so good outcome. So you're not saying, oh, I'm going to love you for 18 months. Then suddenly I'm going to wake up, one day and looking, oh, my God, who are you? Wow. You do this, you do that. You've got these terrible habits that I really didn't notice. Not liking you much anymore. And then as the going gets tough, 5 years in, it's like, wow, reality's really struck now. We're in the phase where now we're building that relationship. So we've had our protection, we've had our procreation, first step, getting together, having kids, protection. Now we're building the family, we're looking after that. And then now the hard yards are starting, because some point our emotional needs are going to be met. We've provided the resources for the relationship. But there's a point where you have to meet the needs. And the needs are actually like a finer level. So you've got resources, which is like, your house, your finances, things like that, the things you build in relationship. But then you've got the needs, trust, honesty, respect, all of these values, all of these experiences that go into meeting needs. Now, if my needs and your needs are different, and we're not actually communicating effectively about those needs, we just tend to blame each other using this refractory system. So rather than having a relationship where we can level up together, being better us's, because it's not really for us, it's for the next generation, by the way. You're literally fixing the problems of the past that weren't fixed in the last generation in your relationship. People ask me this. They say, David, why am I going out with the same person with a different face? It's a very big question I get asked, right? I've had 5 relationships and they've all ended out the same kind of person. I say, well, hey, it's evolution. Where's the learning lessons in that? What are you to learn in relation to this person? What are they trying to teach you? Not they're a bad person. They're trying to teach you something. Now, it might be they're trying to teach you just don't go out with that person because, they're not good. But there might be other lessons. And in today's world, we're very quick. As soon as we don't like someone, we ditch it and get something else. So there's a lot of apps like that. And my clients don't use dating apps, by the way, or internet. We do it the old-fashioned way, because that way we can actually test and qualify. We can really work it out. So at the end of the day, that those needs are met through emotional evolution. If we can meet our needs, not 100%, you're never going to meet your needs 100%, within reason. If you can meet those emotional needs, what's going to happen is you're going to grow in your relationship. You're going to understand each other. You're going to communicate effectively. You're going to recognize that refraction is a nervous system thing and not your partner. Because once you realize that, hey, I'm deleting, distorting, and generalizing, and you're becoming enemy, is that really what I want? Is that really the reality of this relationship? Did I meet you at the start because we only got up to 5 years, at 7 years, when the 7-year thing comes along, and emotional needs really often kick in around 7 years of committed relationships. It's going to be, oh, well, we're going to get a divorce now, at our vows, and we're going to have a terrible breakup, and, we're not going to see the kids. We're going to fight each other for 18 years. I do. We don't do that on our wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
We have all this positive refraction. How does love turn to hate? If love was a thing, because there's no pain in love, that's the reality. Love has no pain in it. Love's all the good stuff. Pain is all the stuff that's inside that gets externalized. And when we externalize our pain onto another person and make them the source of that pain, then we've got an issue, because often that pain's coming from old code of what we experienced. We could have bad trauma, like complex trauma, abuse, things like that. And these are codes that will keep running until we resolve them. And that's what evolution is. It's about resolving those codes. We call it corrections, actually. There's error code in the brain and correction code. So we call about resolving those codes. And who actually helps you resolve those codes the best? Your partner, because you're with them all the time. And weirdly enough, they can be an analog of your mum or your dad. Now, that is in my new book coming out. You can read all about it. But in the realistic sense, we are encoding the relationship, communications, and connections of our significant others into us early on. And that's what can become a default mode setting. In other words, that's why I might be like my dad. So rather than, dad might have got really angry when he got upset, and I'm trying not to do that logically, but as soon as this poor thing zones out and loses energy because it's actually got a literal capacity to cope or regulate me, I will default back to my old code. But where does my old code come from? It comes from what I saw, what was modeled to me, what was experienced, what was epigenetically installed. And so then I get angry, and I go later on when I come out of my refraction, I said, oh, no, I shouldn't have done that. That was bad. I apologize. Now, how many of us do that again and again and again and again? Because that code's running and that code hasn't been resolved. And emotional evolution is about resolving that code. So that's your long answer. How's that?
That's excellent.
It's complicated, very complicated.
Yeah. So with relationships, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess when you're working with somebody or a couple, you also have to look at, like, how does an individual understand themselves better too, right? Because a lot of the times it's, okay, you know what, first, let's take the couple out of this and let's actually just work on you both individually, right? I'm sure you're nodding your head. You see that often?
Yeah, because I don't work with couples.
Okay.
I only work with the individual, the person.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a therapist. I have done all that in the past.
Right.
But nowadays, I work with individuals to recognize their own codes. And I don't do story, by the way. People get a bit weird about this. Story, unfortunately, memory is constructed for the most part. So what happens is, through refraction, we construct the memory based on the quality of the feeling at the time and things that have happened sensorily to us. That's our past. Mm-hmm. And then our mind always future predicts it's going to happen again. It is a complex system, but it's designed for survival. So if something bad happened in the past, there's an automatic future prediction and then a checking of possibilities. Like we call it mapping. We'll map a whole bunch of possibilities, and this can happen quite unconsciously. Then we'll come to some conclusion, we'll get a feeling, and then the thinking mind will go, oh, that must be real. It's going to happen. And so we've already predicted what's going to happen before the event. And so with couples, another reason I don't work with two people in a room is because, by the way, and I'll be honest, you guys' brains are wired a bit differently. You actually process language differently. How are we going to do that? If one party here is processing language different from another party, so in other words, language creates meaning, and we're applying different meanings. One party's feeling words, another party's not. One party's having what we might call cascading feelings, where another party might not be aware of those cascading feelings. Then when I ask a question about a past event, the construction of reality is very different. And who's right? That's the thing. You both are. So in reality, for me, and I'll use the reality a lot, and ironically, two words I love, for me, literally, it doesn't really work. So what I do, and I'm not saying couples therapy doesn't work, because it does, because the Gottman Institute will tell you that it does. However, for me, in my systems that I work with the individual, and I work on how they process their data. And I train them. They become like a student. I train them in linguistics, in recognizing these processes, and then in how to regulate these processes. And the stories are, a story is important when it hasn't been told before, because we have to be heard. Part of childhood trauma is minimization and disempowerment. And as a specialist in power and control dynamics and all of that lot as well, because behaviorist is that stuff. It's pretty much everything. It's to do with humans, how we operate. We have to feel empowered in a situation. When we're disempowered, we become pretty upset, and we're likely to be refracting. So we have to have some kind of power in a situation. So the best power we can have is power over ourselves, power over our own thoughts, our own feelings, and the way that we respond, not react. I do a lot of de-escalation training. In fact, in 2 days, I'm going to train in big organization in verbal de-escalation, because I get a lot of people who are angry. And the first thing in a de-escalation for us is to do an emotional state change on me. In other words, get my emotional state correct before I go and work with, respond to this person over here who's really upset, probably because they haven't been heard, probably because they feel minimized and disempowered. And all I'm going to start doing is acknowledging their experience. That acknowledgement is so powerful, acknowledging the feelings. It's in acknowledging the feelings that most of the resolution occurs. Unfortunately, when we're in a defensive position, we'll often try to defend by trying to get our point across. Although if you listen to people's words, you'll notice really all they're telling you is how they feel. That's what words are doing. We're not looking for the data. We're looking for the feeling. It's all about the feels. It really is. I'm not looking for the situation or the logic or any of that. I'm just looking for the feeling that's underlying that, the energetic charge, the emotion that's going with the words. So yes, Tonya, you're absolutely correct. That's what we're doing. We're working with the individual. If you can name it, you can tame it. And you've got to feel it to heal it. And then you've got to rewire to recover. And rewiring means effort. It means doing that thing over and over and over and over and over again until you get good at it, which is what confidence is. There's no such thing as confidence. Confidence is being good at what you do because you have done it a lot. When I teach, I go into the field and I model this stuff. I don't just sit in the classroom. I'm out there in the field with strangers, showing my students how this stuff works. So it's not just, oh, yeah, this is how it is, guys, go out and do it, because they won't do it. They've got to see me do it. They got to use their little mirror neurons and go, oh, wow. So that's how the people don't react to you when you say this or do that in the way I thought they would. So we have to show it. We have to model it. And to work with someone, I've got rules. And one of my rules is I have to have done it to teach it. And I do this as one of my pet hates, where people are book learning and they're in a session, they're a professional and they're giving advice, yet they go home and they do the very thing they're giving advice about. And this is one of my pet hates. Sorry, it just is. Because how does that person in front of us really get that information? There's a whole bunch of processes with information that are unseen. And when someone's really lived it, you know it. Have you ever met someone you really, really connected with because you know they lived it and you know they made those changes and you feel it and it's inspiring? And that's what it's about. So modeling it helps us to rewire to recover. So yes, long answer to very short question. It's complicated. That's
Now, another thing you mentioned in there too was just understanding the emotion behind the messaging. So for those of us who are very logical, we're paying more attention to the words, but it's probably, is it fair to say that body language, tone, that's going to give us a more accurate depiction of the true story than the words used?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right, Brian. It's the process is really what we do is we read the face first, the body second, the tone of voice third, and last but not least is the good old words. And then we apply our own meaning to the word based on our experience, not the experience of the person communicating it. So we can give an easy example to that. I'm going to say one word right now. And I want you guys to tell me what first pops in your head. First impression. Camel.
Let's say desert.
Desert. And Brian?
I actually thought of the cigarettes and the cigarette commercials with
the
camel.
Yeah. Now, isn't that interesting? One word, two meanings. That is why I don't work with couples. That right there is why. Yeah, because you are processing that through there's a whole bunch of processes that are going on in your brain to do that. Now, let's make it more interesting. See how you go with this. Okay, a three-legged camel walking backward up a hill, following a magician with a purple flowing robe and an orange glowing staff. How'd you go with that? Bit harder, a bit easier.
Yeah. So sorry,
it's a bit more descriptive, right?
Yeah.
Like you've given something very specific, so it's a lot.
Yeah,
you're not leaving too many gaps to fill in.
Yeah.
Camel, it's kind of ambiguous, so it could be a number of things.
So that one is definitely not cigarettes for.
No. So I heard camel cigarettes all the time. It's quite common. I do this in workshops. I start workshops often with this exercise. Okay, the more data I give you, the more work your brain's got to do. Now, if I'd kept talking to you or you were talking to each other, and let's say you're not emotionally refracting, you're okay. You're still having to process all that data by your meaning. The more data, the more this thing zones out. It also fills in the gaps. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily exactly understand what exactly the other person is saying. Exactly. It does not do that. So at some point in time, the meanings will be different. Now, after about 7 seconds, people zone out. So when you're talking to someone and you're actually regulated, you're still not getting all of the conversation. Most of the time, you're filling in the gaps. So yes, I was very prescriptive. And if I kept talking, you would have started to zone out. And then you might have gone, oh, well, actually, I thought it was this rather than that. Yeah? Now, that's just the word part. So if we take it back to what you said, Bryn, about the body language in the face, yes, that is really where you want to start. Although don't forget, you're still interpreting that. And to do good profiling, you need a baseline and you need at least 3 data points of correction, which means a question that I would have to ask to the person to ascertain that what I see. Although there are some general rules that you can kind of apply that are pretty okay. You know, you can look up anyone. I mean, Chase Hughes is a specialist in behavioral stuff. I mean, you can look up his stuff. You can look up Navarro. There's a whole bunch of people who do this, and they work in law enforcement mostly. So that's where I go for this stuff. So at the end of the day, you're going to read that face, you're going to notice that body language, and when the words come out, they're actually emotionally charged with whatever you're feeling. Now, the other person is like an antenna, and they're tuning into your station. So you're an antenna, they're an antenna, you're transmitting, they're receiving, and then they're transmitting and you're receiving. And that's going on in lots of different levels, not just verbally. And whatever your interpretation of that is how you will understand it. You'll future predict based on the past, and then that's the reaction you'll have. That's called a default mode. That's how most people operate, 85% unconsciously. Literally, they're not aware if they're doing this stuff. So, yeah, it's complicated. And what we want to do is we want to be able to go, okay, how do I respond to things? Because if you're refracting, it's a lot worse.
Right.
Because then literally you're filtering through the feeling. And what you're feeling, if it's unpleasant, means that you will actually start to almost hear what you want to hear that fits with what you feel. And you will say that. I don't listen to the words, I listen to the feelings in the word. That's how I do it. As a behaviorist, I'm not listening to the data because the data is distorted and constructed a lot of the times. I'm listening to the feeling state of that word. So there's anger, so there's disappointment, so there's minimization, so there's upsettedness. And that's what I start to work with. I go, okay, so that's how they're probably feeling. Let's ask a question about that. Hey, just tell me a bit more about how you're feeling. I really want to get to understand you better. I want to know how you're feeling. What's this about? And I never use the word why, because when we say why, we lie. Why is an interrogation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I just want to understand better. I just want to understand. So I don't work in the logical mind for the most part because it's incorrect a lot of the times. Now, there are differences between lads and ladettes. Yeah, males and females in our neurology. We have nothing boxes. It's great. And these are real things. They are real things because evolutionary blokes are hunters. I'm a hunter, evolutionarily. I focus on stuff. I don't see the periphery. I don't speak much because we have to be silent. We go a long way silently. We hunt that thing. We catch it. Unfortunately, we kill it. We don't need a lot of empathy and compassion for that job. We bring it back. And if we've had a good hunt, we're good. And if we haven't had a good hunt, we could be dangerous. The most dangerous creature on the planet is the human male. And everything is learnt to adapt to us. You look at your evolution, you will see that everything is learnt to adapt to either avoid us or will work in a way with us in order to maintain the relationship or the connection. So it's up to the men. I put it on my males to make the changes. And that's what I do. So when the lad comes in, I'm going to say, hey, bro, emotional needs, what are they? I'm going to say, okay, let's do some evolving. Let's have a look because you can do this. You can evolve through this. And when I have ladies come in, we look at how they can manage things and we look at also how they sort, qualify, test, and do other things. So we have kind of a little bit different approaches, although I'm work with the human perspective, which means I work human first. We all have the same basic operating system, safety, protection, procreation. We all run off it. Everything is about safety, guys. Everything that you do, you say, is going to have a safety component. You've got a 7-step safety code in your relationship, which runs all the time, whether you're married or you're single, and you can see it anywhere. If I go into a place that's not a bar and I see a couple, I can watch their safety code and see exactly where they are in their relationship, how connected they are, how disconnected they are. When I have a couple come into an office in the old days, I could tell where that relationship was by just watching their proximity, their orientation, and the way that nervous system underneath was responding to the partner. So did that answer your question or not?
Yeah, and some.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it's very nuanced too, because when you look at an individual, you talk about having a baseline to understand, because again, everybody's different. Everybody's so different too. Yeah. You can have this exact same conversation with someone, and it can be very different meaning to it. And the other thing that was really interesting too that you mentioned was, with men and how we've gotten by silently for so long. It just kind of makes me think back to an experience a couple weeks ago. I took my son and my daughter to their basketball practices. They have them be practicing in the same facility. So the boys are on one side. So we were there early for that. So we were there an hour before my daughter's practice started. And we get through an hour of the practice. It's been pretty quiet. And I'm talking to one of the other parents there. And we see the girls as they're warming up. She's like, look at how much more talking there is over there as they're warming up. So I'm like, yeah, they've actually spoken more in probably 7 minutes than these boys have the entire hour that we've been here.
That's right. That's right. And this is what we call a deep code. It's a primal codes. Primal codes take millennia to change. Epigenetics is quicker. So you've got this epigenetic code, which is experiences that are passed on, helping us evolve faster, like in a couple of generations. And then you've got these old codes that we've just had forever. And the old codes are very slow to change. So the expectation that we will just change like that and we'll be different people is really, in my opinion, quite problematic, because our identity is tied up with these codes. So our male identity has been tied up forever with this primal code. And as this primal code has to change, because things change and everyone has to adapt and evolve, that's how nature works. We just start evolving. These processes take time. And so education is the key to helping people through this process, that it's not about you. You're not bad. You're not wrong. You're not this. You're not that. You're basically evolving. Hey, bro, you're evolving. It's how it's happening. And then it becomes not so much a challenge or a problem, but it becomes something to go, you know what, I can do this. I can make that next step. Because if you take hope away from people, then you're really in trouble. And identity is tied into the I statement. So if I say, for example, when I'm doing 3 magic question protocol, which helps sort and, get people to tell me all about them in about 15 minutes so I know whether they're okay or not okay. And I say something like, I'm really curious. You're wearing those wonderful shoes. Are you a lawyer? And they say to me, no, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a used car salesman. I go, okay, that's cool. They don't say I sell used cars. They say I am. I am a lawyer. I am, whatever we are. I'm a soldier. I'm a husband. I'm a wife. I am. That is an identity. Now, there's 3 kinds of resistance to humans, and you'll resist the hell out of this. And you see it with kids all the time because I do a lot of parenting work. The first resistance is resistance to a change of identity. In other words, who I believe I am at my core. Because if you take my identity away, what have I got left? Mm-hmm. Uh-oh, there's a problem right there. So identity. The second resistance is autonomy. If you try and take away my ability to act, so you say to a child, don't draw on the wall, what do? Draw. Of course they do, because it's autonomy. Yeah. So you might say, hey, what will happen if you draw on the wall? Or, see that cupboard over there, have a look at that. What's in there? Oh, cleaning gear. What are you going to be doing if you draw on my wall? That's a whole different process. And the last one is empowerment. If you take away or threaten someone's power. So often when we have aggression and then we have aggression, it's a power struggle. And relationships are all about relational equity. I hate to say it, economics gets into everything. Relational equity just means, what am I bringing to the relationship? So when we meet, we actually have resources and needs. And we bring those into a relationship and we're working together to improve and increase that. Now, when equity changes, so someone's equity becomes larger or smaller due to circumstances, relationships can change. And if we don't have communication around those changes, in other words, a real life example might be, let's say a couple's fairly equal in their equity, financially, emotionally, cognitively, they're fairly equal. And then one partner loses their job. That's an equity change. Now, you might say, it doesn't matter, we'll soldier on, but then the finances are suffering. Things are happening. It's causing tension and friction in the relationship. And an equity change can be the catalyst to a relationship failure. So we look at equity as well. I mean, everything in behavior we look at. So we bring all of these things into the relationship. And if we challenge any of these areas in a human being, and a human, they will fight you. So the idea is to get around resistance. And if you learn how to name it, to tame it, understand what's going on inside and how the other person might respond because they have a nervous system and they got a process going on, then you've got more choices. You've got the ability to make a choice in that communication, and that's where the thinking mind comes in. So my wife's looking angry, and my old system would do this. It would go, oh my God, childhood trauma, which I had tons of that. So yeah, childhood trauma, wife is now my mum, I'm now a 5-year-old, and this is all automatic. So rather than saying, hey babe, would you like a cup of tea? I've just noticed you're a little upset, or are you upset? I go, oh, what have I done wrong this time? Because I'm now back in my child brain. And I'm responding in an old subconscious pattern of behavior that I had as a child to adapt to a situation that I had no power over. So I had to learn to adapt. Now we bring those adaptations into our adult life, and emotional evolution is about adapting as an adult. In other words, pick another path, sunshine. That's not your mum. That's not your sister. That's not your dad. That's not your brother, which the unconscious will actually read it like that because that's what you learn. And what you learn is what it knows. And how you felt is how you are. Feelings are your reality, as I said at the start. Our brain does not check feelings. It does not assess them. They're just true. So if we know this, we can go, you know what, rather than following my old behavior, right now I'm going to regulate the nervous system. I'm going to step away from the cookie jar and say, hey, babe, I've got some feelings going on. I'm feeling anxiety in the body or something in the body. I'm just going to step out there for 5 minutes, do something to manage that, and then I'm going to come back. So I've taken responsibility for my behavior. It's no longer, oh, it's all about you. Because everything actually is about us, believe it or not, because survival is dependent on it. When you're little, well, how you're being treated, it's about you because they're hurting you. Well, they're nice to you. Yeah, so that's cool. That's good. I survive if people are nice to me and they love me. But if they don't love me and they hurt me, whoa, I'm unlovable. Oh, my God, I'm not going to survive. Oh, my God, I've got to adapt to that. And that's what I call core impressions. They're also in my book. So core impressions are our original basic emotional feeling cores that create problems. They create good stuff, lovable, bad stuff, unlovable. And these cores then are divided into emotional drivers, the things that actually drive us to behave in certain ways, and it's mostly without the thoughts. So after that, you've got all these other processes that are on top of that. So it is, again, it's complicated, back to my scapegoat there. Yeah. Did that answer your question or not? Because there's a lot to say in a small amount of time. Does it make sense? That's the main thing there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I was just thinking, like, so you've talked about, the emotional needs and stuff like that. Have you ever had somebody come in and they really are at a point in their life where they are trying to figure out what their real needs are? Absolutely. And how do you walk through that with them?
Yeah. We do a needs assessment. Okay. Literally. I get a piece of A3 paper, I give it to them because, I'm pretty lazy like that. They can do the work. And I give them a pen and I say, okay, what are your mental, emotional, physical, sexual needs? Brainstorm everything you feel you need in your relationship for it to be good, or your life, for you to be happy, for you to feel okay in yourself. And they start writing. Now, the most I've had is one A3. It's a big sheet of paper, back to back with needs, whole thing covered. The least I've had is one. And you guess who the one was? It wasn't from the lady who did the other one. It was from one of my lads. And so we had to tease them out a bit, I had to say, dude. So what the needs are is it's really about, what do I need to survive? What do I need to be happy? What do I need to thrive? And when we get a need, you'll find a value is connected to it. So this is really interesting. Relationships need a few things to be okay. They actually need 5 things from my self-awareness method. First thing they need is safety. Everything's about safety. The second thing a relationship needs is a bit of playfulness, because playfulness shows intelligence, by the way. That's how the neurology reads it. So when we're playful, we're safe and we're smart. The third thing it needs is a little bit of mystery, because if we have a little bit of mystery, once you have a bit of unexpected that's not unsafe, that creates excitement. So that unexpected thing is our mystery, and it's got to be positive. Everything has to be positive. The third thing we need is to be roughly having similar or the same value systems, because needs are tied to values. So values might be things like family, might be things like respect, might be things like honesty. But isn't it interesting? They're also needs. So if you think about your values, you'll start to understand what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing we need, I'm going to say it, is drama. Yes, we actually have to have a little bit of drama in our relationship because it helps us process our feelings. How are feelings processed? Mostly verbally. This is how I'm feeling, and I'm telling you how I'm feeling, and you're acknowledging that. You're telling me how you're feeling, and we're coming to a resolution after the feelings are processed. One of the things that's really detrimental to relationships is suppression of feelings and not talking about how we feel. Not blaming the other, but this is how I feel. This is about me. This is my feelings, not about you, what you did, but how I feel in a situation. When I can talk about that, I'm processing my feelings, because then the emotion isn't accumulating. It's the emotion that does the damage, the energy and motion of the feeling. So that drama I call a robust debate. Yes, couples can argue, and that's okay. I get worried when couples tell me, oh, we don't argue. Whoa, okay, that's interesting. So you don't talk to each other about how you're feeling. You don't have that, I feel really angry right now, or I feel really scared, or I feel really, really minimized, or whatever. What's happening there? Where is that happening? Is the taxi light going on, which means my code for when my needs aren't met, our taxi light goes on, which is our unwritten code for let's find someone else who meets my needs. And that's what happens. And I see it all the time out in the world. I can tell you who's with whom, who's not with whom, who likes whom, just by watching these processes. And it's all unconscious. It's non-verbal. These are not verbal things. So, yes, people will come in and often they don't know what their needs are. I'll say to them, do you wake up in the morning and go, hey, babe, this is my list of needs today. Hey, babe, I get that. This is my list of needs. Let's see if we can meet that. We don't do that. We just expect the other person understands what our needs are. Wow. Remember the camel? Because different needs have literally different meanings. So someone will go like this. They'll go, oh, well, lying's a good one. Truth is a great one. It's a value, but it's also a need. I need truth. So someone will say on their list, they go, I need truth. And I'm going to go, what does truth mean to you? So if someone was completely truthful with you, what would they do? What would they say? What would you feel? How would they act? I'll go through a sensory profile of what that person will do. And then they'll go, oh, they'll do that. That's called a criteria and a checklist. We have these going on in our brain all the time. I call them a balance sheet. When I feel good about you and you're meeting my needs, tick, 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 tick. When you're not, cross, all unconscious. When you get to zero balance or overdraft, it's, now we've got to really work on this relationship. We don't like each other much, but we'll do it for the kids. And then eventually there's receivership, which a lad said to me, Dave, forget overdraft, I'm in receivership. I said, what does that mean? He goes, I'm divorced. So we've got a checklist. Yeah, it's a true thing. It happened. Yeah, my stories are true, by the way. There's a checklist, but it's unconscious. You don't know your checklist. So if you don't know your checklist, how do you know, if your needs are being met and what those needs actually are? And how do you communicate that if you don't know your checklist?
Right.
We just assume our partner understands me. So let's say truth to me is I can tell a white lie because I don't want to hurt you. So that's called an approval driver, emotional driver of approval. Yeah, from childhood. So really, but let's say my partner, she is what we're going to call caretaker queen in my profile. That's her profile, caretaker queen. So she is black and white and honest. So you've got to tell me exactly what you mean. And so literally, here I go, I've got this adaptation, yeah. Yet if I don't understand that her need for truth means to be really clear and tell her exactly what I'm feeling and thinking and what happened, I'll just use my adaptation for truth, which might be, you know what, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm going to kind of omit a few details here. And then she finds out about that. What's going to happen? Does she trust me? Of course not. But if we haven't discussed that where we actually sit, and that's where a robust debate may come in, because you've got to be able to go through a robust debate and get out the other side of it and not hate each other, not, be angry and upset with each other and hold a grudge, because we're communicating. Communication requires that some communication is painful, and that's okay, because we generally tend to avoid pain, and pain creates resilience, and resilience creates emotional evolution as well. So we become resilient. Does that make sense? So when they come in and they need, first thing I'm going to say is, what does it mean? I'll give them that question about, break it down. And then we know what that meaning is, and we know what that value is, and we know their criteria and their checklist, because that way they can say to their partner, hey, babe, this is what trust means to me. Boom, 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 boom. And then it might be, what does that mean? Because some of those will still need to be broken down. Right. So the eliciting question is literally, what does it mean to you? How will you know when you've got it? And what will it do for you? So there's 3 questions. What's important about trust to you? Well, it's important that I trust you because in my childhood, I couldn't trust my caregivers. They gaslighted the hell out of me. Okay, I got that. Okay, so what will it give you if I trust you? Or if you can trust me, sorry. What will it give you if you can trust me? Well, it'll give me safety. I know I'm safe in this relationship emotionally and cognitively. Great. And how will you know when you've got that trust? Well, I'll know when you tell me these things and they're verifiable facts. So do you see how this works? And it takes 1 session to go through needs, honestly, just 1. And then it's about having that communication with that other person. What's your thoughts on that, Tanya?
No, I think that's really, I think that's good. And even just how you were explaining, like, I think so many times, and this is why I brought it up, is because people, they say their needs aren't getting met, but really when they break it down, I don't think they actually know what it is, right? So once you have that determined and then breaking it down and explain, like doing that assessment, I think that is very beneficial, right? Because somebody could be thinking it's something else and it really isn't, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's good. That's great. And let's discuss it. Sorry.
And I was going to say also, like, yes, in the intimate relationships, but then in other relationships as well, it's nice to know what it is you're looking for with your friendships, coworkers, family, all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. That's why you can't go wrong with those questions, those eliciting questions of, what's important to you about it, or what does it mean? It can be either or. And then, what will it give you? What will it give you? And how do you know when you've got it? So these 3 things break down, and sometimes you've got, like, trust, for example, might mean safety. So safety might have a couple of other, meanings. So we might break that down a little bit as well. Yeah. So it's just really about breaking it down.
And I think also too, it takes away that resentment, right? Like looking back to the example of the man who came in and, he got his divorce papers, and you said, well, about his spouse's emotional needs. When you're not having your needs met, then resentment comes in, right? And, then all these other feelings, and then that's what leads to these relationship breakdowns, right? So yeah, definitely good for all of us to know what it is we need. And also things change, right, over the years. It may not be the same as it was when you first got married, or different things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, they do change. Generally, values stay pretty much the same.
Values,
there's a crisis, or there's some other factor, external force that comes in. So people might have values around, I don't know, not harming others, for example, yet something happens, they get broken into and they end up harming someone. So their value is still there, although their behavioural adaptation may be different. So you'll find your values will pretty much stay the same. You'll have core values. There's a lot of values that you can have, but there's like about 7 core ones that most people share. And that's really where we would look at starting is what are those values? What do they mean? What's important about them? What are the needs that come out of that? And then you can then, the next stage, of course, is communicating that to your partner in a way that's safe, in a way that you feel comfortable and okay.
Excellent stuff. Now, I kind of want to wrap things up by doing something a little practical, because one of the things that you mentioned too, and I'm surprised it's only probably about 85%, but so much of what we're doing is happening in the subconscious part of our mind. So I guess in order to start affecting change, I guess we have to be somewhat intentional about kind of noticing our triggers. But what's one piece of advice you could give us if we know that there's some kind of challenge with our communication or just understanding our partner's emotions? What's something that we can do to help improve ourselves? Because it's like you said, it starts with us as an individual.
It always does. When in doubt, leave it out. Don't say that thing. I mean it. They're simple things, although they're the most powerful. The most empowered person is the person who needs no power. They're self-sufficient. They're not needy. Needy's not attractive. So at the end of the day, if we are needy, we will generally verbalize and we will generally try and get our needs met. And often we might use ways like, let's say, a manipulation or a domination. So manipulation is how we're making other people feel responsible for us. So our thoughts, our feelings, what we do, what we say, somehow they're responsible for how I feel. And a domination is aggression. Using a dominating strategy is just plain aggression, either physical, verbal, sexual, emotional, all that. So when we're in a situation where we're feeling a feeling that's unpleasant and it's about to pop out of here, imagine that you're an archer and you've got your bow and you've got your arrow, and your arrow is your words and your bow is your mouth. When you let that arrow fly, is it going to reach the target? Oh, yeah. But it doesn't reach the target of the head. It reaches the target of the heart. And the heart hurts. Yeah, and there's lots of evidence around, how our heart, grief can literally mimic heart attacks, things like that. Yeah. So literally those words, once they leave your mouth, you cannot grab them, catch them and bring them back, and they will forever be recorded. And they will be dug up. We call them dancing puppets. They will be dug up out of the grave later. When you're driving down the road, everything's cool, and suddenly you remember when you said that 10 years ago? Oh, no. Oh, God, I've got a short-term memory here. And it will happen. It will happen. So when in doubt, leave it out if you're feeling that and walk away. Step away from the cookie jar because you don't have to be right. In fact, in a relationship where I've got to be right, what I'm saying automatically is you're wrong. Which that's conflict right there. What I've got to be is I've got to be regulated emotionally, regulated cognitively, have as you said before, you're logical. We're all logical. No one's not logical. Have the conversation when we're regulated. Talk about how I feel. I feel like this. Not, how you feel. Oh, you feel like this. You think this. Mind reading, feeling reading. Nah. I feel like this. This is how I feel. When that was said, I feel like this. It's not about you. You didn't create that feeling. That feeling came from a trigger in me, from somewhere in my neurology, my past. You're not responsible for my feelings or my thoughts. I am. So when in doubt, leave it out. It's one of my favorite sayings. Step away from the cookie jar. Go away, regulate, wait a little while, and come back and have the appropriate discussion, starting with a nice intro like, hey, babe, would you like a cup of tea or something like that? Because we learn better from happiness than from pain. Pain generally tends to make us rigid, and rigidity creates inflammation. Inflammation creates problems. Cortisol is really bad for the bloodstream. It affects our memory. It affects our mood. It affects everything. It comes from distress. So when our partner's distressed, automatically their safety code's up. Their don't touch me code is up, and it's nonverbal. And you can feel it. And it's called a rejection. Now, if that's a trigger for you, rejection, guess what? You're going to say some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to us to regulate ourselves and make the other person safe. Communication is actually about creating safety. That's really what it's meant to do. Helps us make meaning, helps us create safety. So it's up to me to do that with my partner. It's not up to her. It's up to me. And because I am doing that, it means I'm self-sufficient. In other words, I'm okay. If I'm okay, guess what? Honestly, she will become okay. It's a weird thing called entrainment. So literally, if I'm reflecting okay, her neurologist going, oh, there's no threat here, I can lower my shield. But as soon as the threat comes back out of this mouth, the shield's up, Scotty, twice as hard. And that accumulates. That actually accumulates. And you can see it in relationships over time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my two things. Once you've regulated, regulation just means doing something that makes you calmer. Go for a walk, go to the shed. Or for ladies, it's the same thing. Do something that makes you feel good and then come back and have another shot at it. Now, what we say is we do not listen to words in our world. Words, for me, actually mean very little. Behavior is what I actually measure. Behavior. Behavior is the measure of whether someone's learning or not learning. Now, if the behavior is unpleasant for a period of time and I've tried everything that I can to connect, it might be telling me something about my evolutionary trajectory. Depending on what profile I am, depends on how long I'll stick at it. And few of my profiles, I'll stick at it for years, even though the trajectory isn't good. So at the end of the day, those are the two things that I think are important. Well, I probably gave you a few, but that's okay. Thoughts, feelings?
No, hey, that's all really good stuff. So I think there was we covered a lot in a pretty short time, and I know we could probably go on a lot longer too. But
man, 2 days worth of workshops, and we'd still be, it's so big. Yet there's a few basic rules, and that's one of them. When in doubt, leave it out. Walk away, regulate, self-regulate, come back, have another shot in a nice, appropriate, safe way, and eventually you'll get on the same page.
All right.
That's both parties. It's both parties. Yeah.
So, for those who want to learn more and those who want to kind of follow some of what you're doing, what are the best ways for us to connect with you, and what can we expect in the future? I know you mentioned a book that's going to be coming out soon.
Yeah, we're just trademarking we've actually just trademarked our profiles. So where you can actually get me the best is mymilan.com.au. Go to the website, connect with us there. That'll go through our administration, and I'll get all that information, and everything goes off there. I work all over the world, really. So that's the best way, mymilan.com.au. I do have a book coming out about how I profile, how I read people, and how I understand people, and how you can do that within reason, of course, in the context of an intimate relationship. Yeah. So that you can improve your relationship with your partner by, as Tonya said, improving yourself, looking at you, reading you, working out what might be going on with them, and then having that communication about that. And that book will be due out in several months. We're just, as I said, our trademarks are in, and we're just working out some things, as you do with editing and adding and subtracting. But it's coming out. Yep. So it'll be on the website. The book will be there for all to see.
Awesome. So again, that was Milan. So mymilan.com.au. It's linked below wherever you're watching or listening to this. So, David, we just want to thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Tonya. I really appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone who watched or listened to this episode, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.